My name is Emily Carter. I'm 32 years old, and on my 24th birthday, while my friends were texting me birthday wishes, I got a different kind of message from my father. Happy birthday, kiddo. Sold your car this morning. Be grateful. It was just sitting there anyway. That single text message hit me harder than any physical blow ever could. It wasn't just about a car. It was about a lifetime of being treated like I was invisible, like my feelings didn't matter, like my hard work was something they could just take and give to someone else. That car was the only thing in my life that was truly mine, and he had erased it with a casual, cruel flick of his thumb. But before I tell you how everything flipped, like and subscribe and drop a comment to let me know where you are watching from. My story really begins long before that birthday. It starts in a quiet, tree-lined suburb in Washington, in a house that always looked perfect from the outside. My father, Mark, was a man who cared deeply about appearances. He was a successful local contractor, the kind of guy who coached Little League and organized the neighborhood watch. He had a firm handshake and a ready smile for everyone, except, it often seemed, for me. My younger brother, Ryan, was 2 years behind me in school, but in my father's eyes, he was light years ahead. Ryan was the future of the family. He was the one who would carry on the Carter name with pride. I was just Emily, the quiet one, the one who was supposed to be responsible, to not make waves, to figure things out on her own. The favoritism wasn't subtle. It was the foundation of our family, the very air we breathed. I remember when I was 10 years old, I won the school spelling bee. I had studied for weeks, my nose buried in a dictionary until the words blurred together. I ran home with a blue ribbon clutched in my hand, my heart pounding with a desperate need for my dad to be proud of me. I found him in the garage, polishing the chrome on his truck. "Dad, look," I said, holding out the ribbon. "I won!" He glanced at it, then back at the truck. "That's nice, Emily. Good job." He tossed the polishing rag onto a workbench. "Hey, have you seen Ryan? He's got his first baseball game tonight. Big stuff." My small victory vanished. It was just nice. Ryan's first game, where he would probably spend most of the time picking at the grass in the outfield, was big stuff. I stood there in the quiet garage, the smell of wax and gasoline filling my lungs, and I felt myself shrink. My mother, Linda, found me a few minutes later. She saw the ribbon and the look on my face. She gave me a quick, tight hug and whispered, "Don't mind your father. He's just excited for the game." That was my mother's role in our family, the peacemaker, the smoother of rough edges. She never confronted my dad. She never told him he was being unfair. She just managed my disappointment, telling me to be understanding, to not make a scene. Her silence was a kind of betrayal all on its own. It taught me that my pain was something to be managed, not addressed. As we got older, the gap between Ryan and me widened. For his 16th birthday, a brand new Mustang was parked in the driveway, a giant red bow on the hood. Dad stood there, arms slung around Ryan's shoulders, beaming with pride. "Nothing but the best for my boy," he announced to the gathered family members. For my 16th birthday, 2 years earlier, I had received a savings bond for $500. "This will be good for your college fund," Dad had said, handing me the envelope without any ceremony. "It's important you learn the value of a dollar." The lesson was clear. Ryan was to be given the world, and I was to learn how to earn it. I did learn. I got a job bussing tables at a local diner the day I turned 16. Every paycheck, I put half into the savings account my dad had so thoughtfully encouraged me to have. The other half went to my expenses: clothes, school supplies, anything my parents deemed unnecessary. Ryan never had to work a day in his life. His allowance was more than my bi-weekly paycheck. When he wanted new clothes, he used Mom's credit card. When he wanted to go on a ski trip with his friends, Dad handed him a wad of cash and told him to have a good time. When it came time for college, the difference was stark. Ryan was accepted into a private university, and my parents didn't hesitate to write the check for his tuition, his dorm, his meal plan. "It's an investment in his future," Dad would say proudly. I was accepted into the state university, a good school, but a public one. You've got your savings and you know how to work hard, Dad told me over dinner one night. You can get some student loans. It will build character. My mother just smiled weakly from across the table. We're so proud of you for being so independent, honey. Independent wasn't a choice, it was a requirement. So I worked. I worked through college, taking early morning shifts at a coffee shop before my classes and late night shifts at the diner afterwards. I learned to live on cheap ramen and caffeine. I watched my friends go to football games and parties while I was memorizing flashcards with the smell of grease still on my clothes. I was exhausted, but I was determined. I was determined to build a life so solid that I would never have to ask my family for anything, because I knew, deep down, that if I ever did, the answer would be no. The day I graduated, I had my degree, a mountain of student loan debt, and a fierce, unshakable sense of accomplishment. I had done it, on my own. My parents and Ryan came to the ceremony. My dad shook my hand. Good job, kiddo. Now you can get a real job and start paying off those loans. Ryan, who was still a year from graduating, despite starting at the same time, smirked. Yeah, welcome to the real world, Em. He said it like he had any idea what the real world was like. His real world was cushioned by our parents' money. Mine was a tightrope walk without a safety net. That's when I decided I needed a car. Taking the bus to my 2 jobs and trying to find a third, a real one, in my field, was becoming impossible. I needed something reliable, something that was mine. I didn't ask my parents for help. I didn't even tell them I was looking. This was going to be my achievement. For a year, I lived even more frugally than I had in college. I shared a tiny apartment with 2 other girls, my room barely big enough for a bed and a desk. I ate my meals at the diner where I worked, saving every single dollar I could. I watched my savings account grow, slowly, painfully. Each deposit was a small victory, a brick in the wall I was building around myself. Finally, when I was 22, I had enough. I found a used Honda Civic on a reputable lot. It was 5 years old, silver with a few small dings on the passenger side door, but the engine was sound and the interior was clean. It was perfect. I walked into the dealership and paid for it in cash. The salesman's eyes widened when I counted out the bills. He probably thought it was a gift from a rich parent. He had no idea that the stack of worn 20s and 50s represented 2 years of missed sleep, skipped meals, and relentless hard work. The feeling of the keys in my hand was indescribable. I sat in the driver's seat, the new car smell of air freshener filling my senses, and I cried. I put my hands on the steering wheel and felt a sense of power I had never known. This car was mine. The title was in my name. The insurance was in my name. No one had given it to me. No one could take it away. Or so I thought. That Honda Civic became my sanctuary. It was my freedom. It took me to job interviews and eventually to the first day at my new job as a junior graphic designer. It took me on weekend trips to the mountains where I could finally breathe. It was where I blasted music and sang at the top of my lungs after a bad day. It was the quiet, safe space where I could just be myself, away from the constant judgment and expectations of my family. For 2 years, my life started to feel like it was finally my own. I was paying my bills, I was good at my job, I was making friends who saw me for who I was, not as Ryan's older sister. My parents and I had a civil, if distant, relationship. I would go over for Sunday dinner once a month, endure the endless stories about Ryan's amazing achievements, and then retreat back to my own life. Ryan, meanwhile, had managed to graduate and, with Dad's help, had gotten a job at a friend's marketing firm. He was living in a condo downtown, the down payment a graduation gift from our parents. He was already driving his 3rd car, a new BMW, because the Mustang had become old. I never said anything. I just kept my head down and focused on my own path. I thought if I was successful and independent, my dad would finally have to respect me. I was wrong. He didn't see my independence as a strength, he saw it as a resource he could tap for Ryan. The week before my 24th birthday, my phone rang. It was my dad. He never called unless he wanted something. "Emily," he said, his voice brisk. "Ryan's car is in the shop. Some issue with the transmission. He needs to get to work. Can he borrow your car for a few days?" I hesitated. I didn't like anyone else driving my car, especially not Ryan. He was careless. He treated his possessions like they were disposable because for him, they were. "I don't know, Dad. I need it to get to work." "He can drop you off and pick you up," Dad said, his tone already dismissive of my concerns. "It's on his way. Come on, Emily. Family helps each other. Just drop off your spare key at the house tonight." It wasn't a request. It was a command. I felt that old familiar feeling of being backed into a corner. If I said no, I'd be the selfish one, the one who wasn't a team player. If I said yes, I'd spend the next few days worried sick about my car. "Okay," I said quietly. "I'll drop it by tonight." "Good girl," he said, and hung up. I dropped the spare key off that evening. My mom answered the door. "Oh, it's so nice of you to help your brother out." She gave me one of her quick, tight hugs. Ryan was lounging on the sofa, scrolling through his phone. He didn't even look up. He just grunted a thanks in my direction. The next few days were stressful. Ryan was always late to pick me up, making me late for work. When he did show up, the car smelt like stale fast food, and he had changed my radio station presets. It was a small thing, but it felt like a violation. He was making my space his own. On Friday, he was supposed to bring the car back. It was the day before my birthday. I called him. "Hey, Ryan, are you dropping the car off today?" "Oh, yeah, about that," he said, his voice casual. "Dad said he'd handle it. He's got the key. He'll bring it to you tomorrow or something." "Tomorrow is my birthday, Ryan. I have plans." "Relax, Em. It'll be fine. Talk to Dad." He hung up. I tried calling my dad, but it went straight to voicemail. I felt a knot of anxiety tightening in my stomach. Something felt wrong. The next morning, I woke up feeling a little hopeful. It was my 24th birthday. My roommates had left a small cupcake and a card on the countertop. My phone was buzzing with messages from friends. I was meeting them for brunch later. Maybe the day would be good after all. I decided to put the car issue out of my mind. Dad would probably drop it off while I was at brunch, and it would all be fine. And then I saw the text from him. It was nestled between a happy birthday from my college roommate and a funny meme from a friend. The words seemed to jump off the screen. "Happy birthday, kiddo! Sold your car this morning. Be grateful. It was just sitting there anyway." I read it once, then twice. My brain couldn't process it. It felt like a joke, a really cruel, unfunny joke. My hands started to shake. I clicked on his contact and hit call. He answered on the second ring, his voice cheerful. "Hey, birthday girl, did you get my text?" My voice was a hoarse whisper. "What did you do?" "I told you, I sold the car. Got a great price for it, too. A young couple needed a reliable starter car." "You sold my car?" I repeated, the words feeling foreign in my mouth. "My Honda? How could you do that? It's my car." His cheerfulness evaporated, replaced by an impatient sigh. "Emily, don't be dramatic. It was for the best. Ryan was in a bit of a jam. He had some urgent expenses and he needed the cash. You should be thanking me. You're single, you live in the city, you don't have kids. You don't need a car as much as he does." The world tilted. My breath caught in my chest. He wasn't joking. He had taken my most prized possession, the one thing I had worked so hard for, the symbol of my independence, and he had sold it to bail out my brother. And I was supposed to be grateful. "Where is the money, Dad?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. "It went to Ryan, of course. That was the whole point. He's already put it to good use." Tears were streaming down my face now, hot and angry. That was my money. I bought that car with my own money. You had no right. Don't take that tone with me, he snapped. Everything you have is because of us anyway. We gave you a roof over your head for 18 years. Don't act like you're on your own. Now, I've got to go. Your mother and I are taking Ryan out for lunch to celebrate his new venture. We'll celebrate your birthday next week sometime. Be grateful, Emily. The line went dead. I sank to the floor, my phone slipping from my hand. The happy birthday texts continued to buzz, each one a painful reminder of how the day was supposed to be. He had done it. He had actually done it. He had stolen my independence and given it to my brother, and in the same breath told me to be thankful. The shock slowly gave way to a cold, hard rage. It was a feeling I had suppressed for years, a fury I had been taught to swallow. But this time I couldn't. This was too much. This was the final line, and he had crossed it without a second thought. I canceled my brunch plans. I told my friends I was sick. I spent my 24th birthday sitting on my apartment floor, figuring out my next move. He thought I would just cry and accept it. He thought I would be the good, quiet daughter and let it go. He had no idea who I had become when he wasn't looking. He had no idea how hard I could fight for something that was mine. I took a taxi to their house. I needed to see his face. I needed to see my mother's face. I needed to see Ryan's. I paid the driver and walked up the familiar driveway, my heart pounding a furious rhythm against my ribs. The house looked the same as always, perfectly manicured lawn, a welcoming wreath on the door. A lie. It was all a lie. I didn't knock. I used the key they had insisted I keep and walked in. They were in the kitchen, laughing. The sound stopped the moment they saw me. My dad was leaning against the counter, my mom was putting a dish in the sink, and Ryan was sitting at the table scrolling on his phone. "Emily," my mother said, her voice laced with caution, "what are you doing here? I thought you had plans." "My plans got canceled," I said flatly. I looked directly at my father. "We need to talk about my car." My dad sighed, an exaggerated, put-upon sound. "For God's sakes, Emily, I already explained it to you. It's done. Let it go." "No," I said. The word was quiet, but it hung in the air like a stone. "You stole my car, Dad. You took something that I bought with my money and you sold it without my permission." He actually laughed. It was a short, sharp bark of a laugh full of derision. "Stole? Don't be ridiculous. It was a family asset. I reallocated it. Ryan is family. Family helps each other." "Family doesn't steal from each other," I shot back, my voice rising. "How did you even sell it? The title is in my name. It's in my apartment." He waved a dismissive hand. "Paperwork. It's easy enough to get a duplicate title if you know the right people. A signature is just a signature." He was admitting it. He was admitting to fraud, right there in the kitchen, like it was nothing. My mother rushed over, placing a hand on my arm. "Emily, please," she whispered, her eyes pleading. "Don't make a scene. We can talk about this later, when everyone is calm." "I am calm, Mom," I said, shrugging her hand off. "I want to talk about this now. I want to know why you let him do this." She flinched, her gaze dropping to the floor. "Your father, he thought it was for the best. Ryan was in a tight spot. So you just let him take from me to give to Ryan again? When does it stop? When do I get to be as important as he is?" Just then, a car horn honked outside. Ryan looked up from his phone, a smug grin spreading across his face. "That's my ride. Gotta go." He stood up and walked towards the back door. "Try not to be so dramatic all the time, Em. It's just a car." I followed him to the door, my anger so intense I was seeing red. I looked out the window. Parked in the driveway was a shiny, new-looking sports coupe. It was several years newer than my Honda and 10 times as expensive. "What is that?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Ryan's grin widened. "My new car. Used the money from your old junker as a down payment. Pretty sweet upgrade, huh?" He winked, and then he was gone. I turned back to my parents. My father had the same proud look on his face he'd had when he gave Ryan the Mustang. My mother was wringing her hands, avoiding my eyes. The sight of that new car, bought with the blood, sweat, and tears that had paid for mine, broke something inside me. The part of me that had always hoped, that had always craved their approval, died in that moment. It was replaced by something colder, something harder. Everything you have is because of us anyway. My dad's words from the phone call echoed in my head. I looked at him, my expression unreadable. "You're wrong," I said softly. "Everything I have, I earned, and you are going to learn that lesson the hard way." I turned and walked out of the house. I didn't slam the door. I didn't scream. The rage had burned away, leaving behind a quiet, steely resolve. They thought this was over. They thought I would just accept it. They were about to find out how wrong they were. The first thing I did when I got back to my apartment was tear it apart looking for my file of important documents. I found it tucked away in the back of my closet. My hands trembled as I pulled out the folder labeled car. Inside was the original bill of sale, the title with my name, Emily Carter, printed clearly, and all my insurance and registration records. I smoothed out the title on my coffee table. My signature was there, clear and practiced. The one he had used to sell my car had to be a forgery. For a moment, I hesitated. This was a huge step. Suing your own family? Pressing charges? It felt like a plot from a soap opera, not something that happened in real life. They were my family. Despite everything, the idea of turning them over to the law felt like a betrayal. Then I picked up my phone. I scrolled back to my dad's text. Be grateful. Grateful! He wanted me to be grateful that he had stolen from me. He wanted me to be grateful that he had trampled all over my hard work and handed the spoils to my brother. He wanted me to be grateful for being reminded on my birthday that I was second best, an afterthought, a resource to be plundered for the golden child. The hesitation vanished. This wasn't about revenge. This was about justice. This was about drawing a line in the sand so deep that they could never cross it again. I spent the next 2 days researching lawyers. I found a small firm that specialized in civil litigation and property disputes. I made an appointment for Monday afternoon. I walked in with my folder of documents, my heart pounding. I felt like a child playing dress-up, but I pushed the feeling down. I was an adult, and I had been wronged. The lawyer, a woman named Ms. Davis, was professional and calm. She listened to my entire story without interruption. Her expression never changed. She just nodded occasionally and took notes. When I was finished, I felt emotionally drained, like I had just run a marathon. She looked over my documents carefully. She tapped the title with her pen. "This is all in your name. You are the sole legal owner." "My dad said he got a duplicate title," I explained. "He would have had to claim the original was lost and sign an affidavit, likely forging your signature to do so. And then he would have had to forge your signature again on the duplicate to transfer ownership to the buyer. So, what can I do?" Ms. Davis looked at me directly. "You have two paths here, Miss Carter. First, this is a clear case of civil conversion, which is the legal term for theft of property. We can sue your father and your brother for the fair market value of the car, plus damages. Second," she paused, her gaze steady, "what your father did is also a crime. Forgery and filing a false document with the DMV are felonies. Selling stolen property is also a crime. You have the right to file a police report." The word felonies hung in the air. This was more serious than I had even realized. If I file a police report, what happens? The police will investigate. If they find sufficient evidence, the district attorney's office may press criminal charges against your father. He could face fines, probation, even jail time. Jail time? The thought made my stomach churn. My own father. "What would you advise?" I asked, my voice small. "My advice is to start with the civil suit," she said gently. "It puts them on notice that you are serious. We will send them a demand letter first, laying out our case and demanding the return of the value of the vehicle immediately. Often that is enough to make people see sense. If they refuse to cooperate, we file the lawsuit. The police report remains an option you can use at any time. It's a powerful point of leverage. I nodded, feeling a small sliver of relief. A letter. That felt manageable. It wasn't a police car showing up at their door. It was a first step, a warning shot. Okay, I said, my voice firmer now. Let's do that. Let's send the letter. I walked out of her office feeling lighter than I had in days. I had an ally. I had a plan. I was no longer just a victim of their whims. I was taking control. 2 weeks passed. It was a strange, tense time. I didn't hear a word from my family. I assumed my dad thought I had cooled off, that I had accepted my fate. I went to work, I saw my friends, and I tried to live my life as normally as possible. But the betrayal was a constant low hum beneath the surface of everything. I was saving money for a new car, but the process felt tainted now. Then, one evening, there was a loud, angry pounding on my apartment door. I knew who it was before I even looked through the peephole. My father stood there, his face red and contorted with rage. Ryan was behind him, looking sullen and angry. I opened the door. "What the hell is this, Emily?" my dad roared, waving a letter in my face. It was the demand letter from Ms. Davis. "Are you out of your mind? You're suing me? Your own father?" "I'm not suing you yet," I said, my voice surprisingly calm. "That's a letter asking for you to return the money you stole from me. If you do that, it all goes away." "Stole? I told you, I reallocated a family asset," he yelled. People were starting to peek out of their apartments down the hall. "My car was not a family asset," I said, keeping my voice low and even. "You committed fraud to sell it. That is a crime, Dad." "You're tearing this family apart," he accused, his voice booming in the narrow hallway, "over a stupid old car. Your mother is a wreck, crying her eyes out because her daughter is trying to destroy her father. Mom is crying because she has to choose between what's right and what's easy, and she always chooses what's easy." Ryan stepped forward then, his face a mask of arrogant indignation. "You're just selfish, Emily. You always have been. You have a good job. I needed that money. You could have just helped me." "Helped you?" I looked at him, truly looked at him, and for the first time I didn't see my brother. I saw a spoiled stranger. "You didn't ask for help. You and Dad stole from me. There's a difference. You stood right there in the kitchen and bragged about your upgrade. You felt no guilt. You felt nothing." "This is insane," my dad muttered, shaking his head. "We are not giving you a dime. This is a family matter, not a legal one. You call off your lawyer or you will regret it." It was the threat that did it, the same old bullying tactic he had used my whole life. But I wasn't that scared little girl with the spelling bee ribbon anymore. I met his furious gaze with a calm one of my own. "No," I said, "I won't be calling anyone off. Ms. Davis has already prepared the lawsuit. If we don't receive a response by the deadline in that letter, she will file it with the court. And she also advised me to file a police report for forgery and theft. I haven't done that yet. I was trying to spare you and Mom that humiliation. But if you continue to threaten me, I will." I watched the color drain from their faces. The anger in my dad's eyes flickered, replaced with a flicker of fear. He was a man who lived and died by his reputation in the community. The idea of the police showing up, of his name being in the paper, of his friends and neighbors finding out he was a thief who stole from his own daughter, that terrified him more than anything. Ryan looked pale and sick. His bravado was gone, replaced by the dawning realization that he was in real trouble. "You wouldn't," he whispered, his voice hoarse. "Try me," I said. I held their gaze for a long moment, the silence in the hallway thick with everything that had been unsaid for 24 years. Then I slowly and deliberately closed the door in their faces. I leaned against it, my legs weak, and listened as their footsteps retreated down the hall. The lawsuit was filed a week later. They didn't respond to the letter. I think my father's pride wouldn't let him. He couldn't admit he was wrong. The case didn't go to a dramatic trial. My lawyer said it was an open and shut case. The documents were all there in black and white. My father, facing a mountain of evidence and the very real threat of criminal charges, was advised by his own lawyer to settle. The judge ordered the full market value of my Honda to be returned to me plus my legal fees. It wasn't a huge amount of money in the grand scheme of things, but to me it was everything. It was validation. It was justice. My father had to write me a check, an admission of his guilt in the only language he truly understood: money. The fallout was quiet but devastating for him. Word got out. It always does in small communities. People talk. The story of Mark Carter, the upstanding family man selling his own daughter's car behind his back, spread through the neighborhood. His reputation was tarnished. Some of his business partners grew wary. The proud, respectable mask had slipped, and people had seen the ugliness underneath. With the settlement money, I bought a new car, a brand new Toyota Camry, right off the lot. It was reliable, safe, and entirely mine. The day I drove it home, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't felt in years. It wasn't the same giddy joy I'd felt with the Honda. This was something deeper, more mature. It was the quiet triumph of reclaiming what was mine. I also used the money and the savings I had been building to make a down payment on a small condo in a neighborhood further away from my family. I needed the distance, both physically and emotionally. The day I moved in, I sat on the floor of my empty living room, surrounded by boxes, and I breathed. For the first time, I felt truly, completely free. My peace wasn't instant, but it was real. I had built a life for myself, and this time, I had built the walls high enough that they couldn't just reach in and take pieces of it whenever they wanted. Months went by. I settled into my new life. I loved my new home. I excelled at my job and was given a promotion. I was building a community of friends who valued and respected me. The silence from my family was a relief. There were no more guilt-tripping phone calls, no more demands disguised as requests, no more Sunday dinners filled with passive aggression. Then, one evening, my phone buzzed with a text from a familiar number. It was my dad. My heart gave a little jolt, a conditioned response from a lifetime of anxiety. I opened the message. Ryan's struggling. Lost his job. His new car got repossessed. Be kind. Lend him some money. I stared at the words. The audacity of it was breathtaking. After everything they had put me through, after I had to take them to court to get back what they stole from me, he was asking me to give money to Ryan. The message wasn't an apology. It wasn't an attempt to reconcile. It was another demand. Be kind. He was telling me my kindness was something I owed them, something they were entitled to. Old Emily would have agonized over this. She would have felt guilty. She would have wondered if it was her responsibility to help, if saying no would make her a bad person, if it would tear the family even further apart. But I wasn't old Emily anymore. I had learned a hard lesson. My kindness was not a weakness to be exploited. My compassion was not a resource to be drained. And my money, earned with my own two hands, was mine. I thought about typing a furious response, about listing all the ways they had hurt me, about reminding him of the court case. But then I realized it would be pointless. He wouldn't hear it. He would only see it as another attack, more drama from his selfish daughter. So I did nothing. I put the phone down. I didn't reply. I simply deleted the message. I chose peace, not war. My silence was my answer. It was a boundary, clear and solid. And I knew it would be louder than any angry words I could have written. My brother's arrogance, his sense of entitlement, had been built on the foundation that I would always be the safety net, that our parents would always take from me to give to him. By refusing to play my part, I had let his world collapse under its own weight. It was his struggle now, not mine. I walked over to my window and looked out at the city lights. I was no longer the girl who shrank in the garage, hiding her blue ribbon. I was a woman who had fought for herself and won. They had tried to teach me that I was worthless, but I had learned that I was strong. They had tried to take my independence, but I had built a fortress they could never breach. My story wasn't about a car anymore. It was about finding my own voice, even if that voice was just a quiet, powerful silence. If you've ever been betrayed by the people who should have protected you most, you know how deep the pain cuts. It leaves scars that no one else can see, but it also teaches you a strength you never knew you had. Tell me, would you have taken them to court or just walked away? Drop your answer in the comments. And don't forget, like, share, and subscribe for more stories like this.